All right. So now we're about to start with this new session. Here it is time to choose protagonists out of all the delegates. Because I want to say that Mug 2020 rather, is truly a show run for all and by all. Next up is the town hall session. To explain what it truly is and how does it run, I would like to call upon Dr. Vaishnavi Jatana.
Good evening. We shall be now starting with the last, but definitely not the least session of the day. That is Town Hall. Now, we'll be having three speakers other than from our esteemed international faculties that will be presenting their own experience with prolapse and how they dealt with it. So, without wasting any further time, I would like to present our first faculty, Dr. Anshumala. Dr. Anshumala Shukla Kulkarni. She is a consultant gynecological laparoscopy surgeon and a robotic surgeon practicing at Kokilaben Dhirubhai Ambani Hospital, Mumbai. She has a special interest in advanced gynecological laparoscopy surgery, pelvic floor reconstructive surgery, excisional endometriosis surgery, and robotic surgery. So I would give it over to ma'am to share her experiences with us.
Good evening, and thank you very much for the invitation to participate in the Urogynecology workshop. It has been an interesting session since 3. I did log in slightly later, but it's been a good session so far. And I was asked by Dr. Deeksha Pandey to present something which was unusual in urogynecology that we have done. I would like to speak to you today about a case where we did what is called as levator and eye fixation. Now, just to get an understanding as to what this is all about, we should know the dynamics of how the levator and eye muscle complex actually acts in our body. And you know the pubococcygeus muscle, which is inserted in in the lateral part of the distal vagina, is actually going forwards and pushing the pubourethral ligament and perineal body forwards. So the levator plate, which is at the back, is inserting into the posterior wall of rectum and stretching the organ backwards, and it is actually a pull and a push between these two, which is keeping a harmony of keeping our organs in place and allowing micturition and defecation to happen at our will and control. uh, so going on to the next one, the longitudinal muscle of the anus, however, connects the levator and eye plate, the pubococcygeus muscle and the puborectalis muscle to the external alien sphincter and creates a downward vector. So this is one muscle which is actually pulling everything downwards. So if you realize that if there is a weakness of the pubococcygeus or the puborectalis muscle, then the longitudinal muscle of the anus, which is connecting it to the levator and eye, is actually going to pull down the levator and eye downwards. This muscle is what is usually acting to hold things in place whenever the patient is coughing or straining. The fourth muscle is the puborectalis, which is a part of the anal continence mechanism. It originates medially to the pubococcygeus muscle and oriented vertically. It surrounds the posterior rectal wall and pulls the rectum anteriorly. This is what we use to demonstrate Kegel's exercise. So this is essentially the dynamics of the push and pull of each of the levator and eye complex. And I present to you a case of a young 30-year-old paravan living one who had a normal delivery a year back, came to us in A&E multiple times with urinary retention. She had required catheterization a couple of times after and had come to the A&E for catheterization couple of times. She always used to have very high volumes of urine retention, about 900 ml, 700 ml, 600 ml, unable to void completely. She also had a uterine descent, which was going up to +3 on the pelvis, with a mild rectal prolapse, no cystocele, and she was very desirous of future childbearing. So this is essentially what we did next. So we did an MRI, dynamic MRI, to evaluate where the defect lied, because this was certainly not just the uterine prolapse causing a retention of urine, and we had to figure out what was it that was causing it. So here you can see the video. As you can see, the bladder is very lax, and the uterus was actually down up to +3 outside of the anus. So we decided, after having done the MRI, we knew that there was what is called the levator and eye blowout or levator and eye prolapse, and we needed to fix the levator and eye and the pubococcygeus back to allow to stop the kinking of the pubourethral ligament that was happening. So what was happening is there was a downward descent of the levator ani, because of which there was a pull posteriorly towards, there was a weakness posteriorly. However, the anterior part, the anterior pull of the pubococcygeus muscle was very strong. So that was always constantly pulling forwards whenever there was straining. But because there was laxity in the posterior part, the levator ani would fall down below the M line, and the pubourethral ligament would actually effectively kink the urethra against the pubic symphysis, and therefore the patient was unable to void completely. So we decided to go ahead and do a laparoscopic levator ani fixation. Here we have opened up the pouch of Douglas and exposed the levator ani on both sides. We always use a rectal probe in place so that we are able to move the rectum to either sides and identification of the muscle is usually done visually or by using a electric current on it to see the contractions. Initially what we did was to actually reduce the genital hiatus. So we are taking bridging sutures between the two levator ani on both sides. The suture of choice in this case is a multifilament non-absorbable suture. The reason being that it is much more softer and easier to handle as compared to the non-absorbable monofilament sutures. Of course, enough space is left behind posteriorly to ensure that there is a good amount of space for rectal emptying to happen. So a couple of bridging sutures were taken to ensure that there is a good bridging and the good plication of the levator being done at this point.
Is that means screen showing grid? Grid.
So here you can see that both the levators are now plicated and the genital hiatus is narrowed. We ensure that the rectum has enough space and we are keeping the rectum far away from this. We open up the space laterally between the rectum and the uterosacrals to place the mesh. So we used a polypropylene mesh in this area to fix the levator ani to the sacrum. Here you can see that we've opened up the peritoneum medial to the uterosacral. We've identified the ureter and we know it's quite far lateral, so it's not getting kinked with our suture. Usually we tunnel a space inside the peritoneum without opening up the entire peritoneum. It just saves us the time of suturing. Next, we are going to attach the mesh to the levator ani. Here we are using a monofilament non-absorbable suture. The mesh has been designed in such, has been fashioned in such a way that it is now has two Y arms going downwards to each levator ani and has something on the posterior cervix as well as an arm which is coming up to the sacrum. So it is like a Y-shaped mesh. This surgery, of course, also involved fixing the mesh to the posterior cervix so that the simultaneous sacrohysteropexy was also achieved to reduce the apical prolapse that the patient had developed. So the same thing is done here. As you can see that we are now going to fix the one of the arms of the mesh to the posterior cervix around at the level of the isthmus. From the cervix up to the level of the isthmus, we fix the mesh there posteriorly, and then subsequently we will pull this third arm of the mesh through that peritoneal tunnel that we had created and fix it with the tackers as well as sutures onto the sacral promontory and the anterior longitudinal ligament on the sacrum. If when we followed up the patient, if you can see here, this is the pre-operative dynamic MRI of another patient, where if you see the levator ani which is coming down, and there's a definitive cystocele, not so much of apical seal here, but once you do the fixation, if you see here, the levator ani is now even on Valsalva does not move down from the M line, which is drawn from the pubic symphysis to the sacrum here. And that actually ensures that continence is achieved and maintained while we are doing this procedure. Thank you very much. That's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So I really want to congratulate you. Can I start speaking, Mohit? Is it okay? So Dr. Kulkarni, it was Dr. Anshumala Kulkarni. It was lovely presentation. It was an excellent demonstration. I have one doubt, maybe because when we say urogynecology, we are more of vaginal surgeons. Could this procedure would have been done? Like, is it possible to do it vaginally also, the thing which you have shown doing laparoscopy? Is it possible to do the plication vaginally, levator? Because I have never done this kind of case. So I just wanted to know your opinion. And from the house also, what is their experience? Dr. Douglas, Dr. Jenny, Dr. Ebarza.
I have never seen a levator and eye plication done the way. And here it was not just the plication, it was also fixation. So the levator and eye had moved from its position and was actually descending down with Valsalva. And the whole idea of this particular surgery was to ensure that the levator and eye does not move down on Valsalva and thus does not have those traction forces which are happening on the anterior compartment. So I have, in my experience, not seen it being done vaginally. I'm sure the other experts can also comment if they have anything to say.
But it was beautiful demonstration. I was awestruck how beautifully you have done it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice video and excellent shot. I think it would be difficult to do it vaginally just because some of the understanding the dynamics of the pelvic floor transcending down with Valsalva, going up from below, you would not maybe be able to reproduce some of the upper forward forces that you need to tighten up and shore up. So I think the laparoscopic approach would probably be the best.
I have a comment, please. I'm just a little bit concerned. Did you do urodynamics on this lady?
Yes, we did. We did thoroughly have her, and I mean, I didn't say this on the follow-up, but on follow-up, the patient has resumed. So we put her on medications, but post the surgery in 6 months' time, the patient has actually gone back to normal voiding. So her bladder is now recovered. She's able to void well. She doesn't have high post-void volumes anymore. And she, post the surgery, 1.5 years after that, she conceived naturally. Though she did have a spontaneous abortion at 20 weeks, which, I mean, she didn't really come to us for that, but we just got to know this when we called her up for a follow-up. But so I don't know what happened there, why that happened, but she did resume her urinary function back to normal. And we did do a urodynamic before we actually went ahead, and yeah, we did do that.
Because your first thought on a postpartum woman would be that she'd had, she'd had some denervation. It wasn't purely obstructive, And I suppose I'm wondering in this situation whether I would have just done a sacrospinous fixation just to get the uterus back. It's hard to know, isn't it? That was obviously a very successful operation. How would you anticipate she would deliver?
I've told her to go in and have a cesarean section and not have a normal delivery. I don't think we should be stressing the pelvic floor anymore. So I have instructed her. She did have the spontaneous abortion. Like I said, I don't have the details because she didn't come to me. But that was 20 weeks and I guess a very spontaneous fast expulsion. But I have told her that if she has to conceive and deliver, she has to have a cesarean section. It's better for a pelvic floor.
There is a lot of evidence that the damage is done with the first delivery and there's very little change. Certainly Peter Dietz's work suggests that there's no change in the levator avulsion with any subsequent delivery. But yes, I would agree with you. It would be difficult with that mesh support to suggest vaginal delivery. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anatomically, am I audible?
Yes, doctor, you are.
Yeah. Anatomically, the levator ana, they are very low down, maybe around 2.5 centimeter from the vaginal introitus. Anytime when you do traditional posterior colpoperineurophy,
Hmm.
like definitely like we dissect the space and you reach laterally, we
Hmm.
get three throws on the levator ana and you placate them in the midline. So you have wonderfully done demonstrated from above. I think for a routine laparoscopic surgeon, maybe that fixing the cervix part is okay, but going so many centimeters
We've
down,
done this
really
actually.
requires a
I've
lot of
had
expertise.
I learned this actually at Australia at Sydney Women's Endosurgery Center. That's where they used to do this very often. And the dissection is actually very simple because there is no nerve, there is no big vessel there. The only trick here is to be able to put your suture and maneuver the needle holder well in that area. If you think about dissection point of view, that area is completely avascular. It has one maybe major vessel lower down near the rectum. Otherwise, it's a totally avascular and a very easy plane to create, to get into it. The only challenge here is the suturing part. If you're able to maneuver your needle holder and take your suture, then getting to the space is not difficult.
Yeah. And when I saw your suturing, they're actually not too much placated in the center, like it was lax. Like there was a distance between the two levator ana. They just brought to the center, but not completely.
No. So we would not want to go ahead and do a very aggressive one there. That's the reason why the rectal probe was there in place, to ensure that we are always keeping very mindful of the fact, because then patients can have painful defecation later or can have constipation later. So we do just enough to make sure that the levators are plicated and there's better support there, but we don't want to cause obstruction. So I wouldn't tie a very tight suture there or try and get the two. No, I wouldn't do that.
Do you prefer using barbed sutures or simple ordinary sutures?
I've always used simple sutures. Barbed sutures, there is something available in non-absorbable also. It's called PBT in one of the V-Lock suture that is made by the Covidien Medtronic people. So there is a non-absorbable barbed suture available as well. So if you want to start off with this and want to use, I've just recently started using that for sacrocolpopexis because it just makes it easier to do a running stitch all through rather than multiple knotting. But yes, you can use a non-absorbable one. There has been a lot of talk about using tackers in this area on the levator ani, or even using PDS sutures. But I think in prolapse, it's important to remember this is something that has to support her for a very long time. So you have to use a non-absorbable suture. I don't think it's a good idea to think of compromising on that part. And we do have a barbed suture. So, if you want to take that suture, the needle is slightly bigger than this one. It's not a CT2 needle. It is a slightly bigger needle, but if you are able to manipulate that, that the knotting becomes easier. There could be technically some risk with regards to adhesion of the rectum to the barbs later. So I'm not sure how well it would work there. I have used it for sacrocolpo, but then I extraperitonealize it. So once I've extraperitonealized it, I know I'm sure that I'm not exposing the suture much. But I don't know if in that area, I'm not sure if that's going to actually work because the rectum is right there and there's nothing between your barb suture and the rectum. So
I think the discussion is going on very well, but we are a little pressed on time. And Dr. Anshumala, I want you to come also to tomorrow's workshop because we have a little more time. And Dr. Douglas is going to show us many surgeries. Maybe we can give you a laparoscopic view in the vaginal surgeries also. Sure. I think it will be really great. I'm sure that Dr. Jennifer and Dr. Hebbar sir will be there with us that day also. And you can be here. We are going to have our next.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Dr. Sejal.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.